Welcome back to the Consistency Corner podcast. I'm really pumped for our conversation today with my friend Kim Roy, who is a pitching and visibility strategist and founder of Pitch with Kim, where she helps women founders, coaches, and creatives use their voice to build real authority through podcast guesting that fits their business. Instead of spray and pray pitching, Kim crafts personalized pitches that land her clients in the rooms that matter in front of the right audiences. And today we're going to be talking a lot about knowing what audience you're talking to and knowing what to say to that audience. But before we get into that, Kim, as a human, is from Maine. You'll find her running around with her dog, reading or chasing her daughter when she's not working. We've had some really good offline conversations, which led to this podcast. And I'm excited to bring you into the room as we dive deeper on some of the things that are going on in her business, her life as a founder, and then bring it all together with how podcast pitching can support you with your business and your marketing strategy. So, Kim, thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much, Ruthie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more, kind of the behind the scenes, the 30,000-foot view of your business, how you got into doing what you're doing today.
Oh my gosh. I feel like that's always such a loaded question
I
because it's
know.
like the one question that you want to have nailed down, right? Especially when you're referencing like an elevator pitch. And I feel like that's such an answer that changes depending on the audience, which is such like case in point what we're talking about today. But truly, right, that bird's eye view, how I got into what I'm doing is a story of evolution. So for me personally, my personal story really tremendously has impacted where my career has taken me. And I know a lot of the women that I work with too, that is also such the case for them. And so we can get into that more a little bit later. But the long and short of it ultimately is I lost my father very unexpectedly 7 years ago. And I'm an only child, and losing him completely transformed my life tenfold, right? As you can imagine. Back then, I was in corporate banking, I was doing the 9 to 5 in corporate America, really kind of boxed in, we'll say. And I thought that was it. I was like, this is what I meant to do for the rest of my life. And then after I lost my father and my world flipped upside down, I did enter a dark period for a really long time. Took a while to get myself out of that. But as I worked my way out of that and found my breath again, right? Found the light of day again, I learned more about myself. And as would be the case when you go through a deep transformational healing journey, and whatnot. And I realized that that 9 to 5 box that I had really just like wrapped myself up in, I was not meant for. And I didn't really know what that meant for me. But ultimately, I had been shrinking my voice for years, especially as an only child, really thriving to always do the right thing to make my parents super proud, especially my father, right? I was always showered with love endlessly, but it was just this perfectionistic type A tendency, where I became quite codependent. And the journey, my learning journey, and what I've had to evolve through is how to find my voice. And that really lends itself to allowing yourself to fully being seen, not just externally by others, right? Whether that's personally, professionally, or otherwise, but also allowing yourself to see yourself. And what is being seen? Visibility, which is ultimately what has, followed the breadcrumbs. If I look back in hindsight, I'm like, oh, but of course I'm meant to be doing what I'm doing now. And so, fast forward a few years after losing my father, I ended up losing my job quite unexpectedly, just a corporate restructure that I didn't see coming. I was a part of the plan until I wasn't. And I knew that I was being served with such a beautiful opportunity on a silver platter. While it was radically uncomfortable, I was like, you know what? This is an opportunity to do something different. And podcasting was something that I had leaned into personally as a way to exercise my voice, to share my story, and to bring other women along for the ride with me. Because I also learned that when we keep ourselves quiet, we do not only ourselves a disservice, but we do other people a disservice who need that permission, who need to hear your story because it's permission for them to step forward. So that also helped me tremendously with my healing. And that led me down the road of podcasting. And then after I left my corporate job and decided to just pursue employment for myself, I knew that this was the road I needed to walk down. It's more than leveraging the podcast channel as a marketing and publicity tool and strategy, but it really is about using your voice because what you have to offer the world has impact and you have impact. So again, it's that permission, right? When you show up and you lead first, you're giving the woman behind you or the person behind you permission. And so really empowering women to also use their voice through this medium, through this channel.
Yeah. I love that. And talking about the different women that you can impact, I know that your core bread and butter of your business is done for you pitching. And I can definitely appreciate that as a marketing agency owner, where our job is to lighten the mental load of marketing for our clients and take things off of their to do list. But I know that you've also got some done with you offers, which we're going to talk a little bit about, and that there was a moment in time that you were doing some coaching and education. And I think a lot of service providers fall into this trap of, I'm supposed to do it all. I'm supposed to have this offer suite, this income stack, and might really love doing both, but find that doing both isn't sustainable. Is that kind of how it unfolded for you?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it is really one of those things where sometimes you need to be able to explore that journey for yourself to kind of learn the lesson that needs to be learned rather than just being told that. I remember when I started my business, we're going like what, 4 years ago now, one of my peer mentors, my coach, she has, I mean, I respect the heck out of this woman. And not only her, but I've heard it from other coaches as well, that you and this is true. It's very much a co-creation. I hear this with my clients a lot too, this misconception of I'll put myself out there, AKA I will get visible. I will go on this podcast and do the interview when XYZ, right? So in this case, the example I'm using is when I have my offer suite ready, when I have my offers figured out. And especially if you're just starting out in business or if you're in a transition or anything, the creating the offer has to be a co-creation with what your ideal audience actually wants and needs from you. Because we can create as a business owner, especially as a creative, we can create and create and create to our heart's desire and what we are passionate about. But if it's not what your ideal client is looking for, you can spend all this time and energy creating something that will not necessarily serve them in the way that you desire to. So I offer this because that is essentially kind of what happened with me. When I started my business, I really built was it started from that kind of like that agency threshold, right? Like that was like the vision I had for myself, hence why I started in that done for you capacity. And it has served so well. And it has been really fruitful over the years. And it was like the end of 20, what year are we in? 2026, the end of 2024. I really had this calling to do more coaching. What was interesting about that, Ruthie, is obviously the service, the done for you pitching, it's a service, right? And a lot of people from the outside were identifying me as a coach. I realize now that had a lot to do with my own messaging back then. And so it was almost like this like passive objection that I kept having to speak to of like, well, I'm not actually a coach until one day I was like, oh, well, what if I create an offer where I can put my coaching skills into play? And this has a lot to do with what I'm passionate about. I excel at that. I love sharing my story, my lived experiences, and really creating that impact. And so I did. I launched a coaching program and I had the program for probably about like 15 months or so. And it was absolutely transformative for the women who came through the program. And it was also very transformative for myself as well, because I stepped into my own leadership in that. And I think that ultimately was a building block to where I am going now. But
Mhm.
what happened over time is I'm still one person. I'm, 3 to 4 years into business. I have a team, I'm building, I'm scaling. But as such, it takes time and energy and resources to be able to market to two different ideal clients. So
Yeah.
while visibility is visibility and I can talk about it all day long because I'm so passionate about it and pitching and podcasting and guesting and all of the things, the way I speak about it to an ideal client who falls under the done for you service umbrella, and then the way I talk about it to a client who falls under the coaching umbrella are vastly different, as are the respective funnels that those clients come in on, right? Like their client journey. And so ultimately what happened is I kind of swung the pendulum a little bit and focused a lot of my marketing efforts on the coaching program and less on the done for you. And then come the tail end of it, it was not proving fruitful on either side for me. And that's just me being fully transparent, fully radically honest, because you have to really know where your business is going, the direction it's going into, and radically align your goals and your strategy with that. Right. So, yes, I had a lot of passion with the program, the coaching program. And certainly a lot of the women that came through were really sad to hear that, and I said, it's never permanent. It's a pause. We don't know what's going to happen down the road. I'm following my journey along just like everyone else, right? My journey of visibility. And so, yeah, so I did recently release the coaching program. Was what, effective April, I think. So maybe like about a month ago, to really put my time, energy, attention on scaling the agency side of my business, which is that done for you. And that's really where I have teams supporting me right now. And because I was also able to make such an uncomfortable decision in my business, which we have to do as business owners all the time, right? Again, such a key part of visibility, right? Seeing yourself and allowing yourself to take uncomfortable action, uncomfortable decisions, even when it makes others uncomfortable and making the change. And now that I have kind of like released that, I can see so clearly what the next steps are for me. Can I see 10
Yeah.
steps ahead? No, that's impossible, right? But I can see the next step. And so for the first time in several months, I feel like I'm much more clear on the direction my messaging is going. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, because you're right. Those are two different audiences and they both have needs and they both have value and there are ways that you can serve both of them. But the analogy that kind of popped into my brain was that it's like trying to talk to a kindergarten teacher and a high school teacher the same way. Like
Correct.
they're completely different in who they serve, how they serve. Yes, they both educate, but it is completely different. And so I always tell our clients that if you try to talk to everybody, nobody listens. When you try to talk to one person, other people will eavesdrop. And to your point, the coaching model, it doesn't mean it's going away forever. It could come back, but you saw that you needed to pour the energy into scaling your done for you business, keeping that pipeline full, making sure that the market knew that this is what you do, that you become the go to expert for it. And that takes capacity, it takes time, it takes energy, it takes focus that is hard to do when you're serving multiple audiences. And it's interesting, I think back on my corporate days that, I worked for a successful athletic retailer in the running space and they launched another business in the bike world, so cycling. And the amount of effort it would take to sell one bike because our audience wasn't there. We had to
Hmm.
do the audience building of that new audience. And as a CEO, as a business owner, you have to ask yourself, what's the opportunity cost of me pouring into this new audience? And it might be that I'm sacrificing my existing offer. I'm sacrificing my bread and butter. And there's no right answer. It's your own gut instinct. What is your data telling you? What is the future you want to build? And those decisions are challenging, right?
They absolutely are. And that's where, honestly, I love that you just said that. It really comes down to it's your decision. What does your gut tell you? You know. And so I could easily look back and say, oh my gosh, I lost all this time, whatever stories I decide that I want to tell myself, right? Because I want to guilt myself into, oh, now I need to pivot again. But how many times as a business owner do we pivot, right? That is all part of the journey. It's all part, truthfully, of having fun in the process. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. And that's why I also said earlier, I do believe now, looking back, that not only was my program transformative for my clients who came through it, but it was transformative for me because I really stepped into a whole new level of myself that I had not seen before. And so now I can see how I can inspire the same way, but at a greater scale. It might look a little bit differently, right? So releasing that will create space for something else. And personally, I do have a vision to be on stages. So it can look and feel differently, but at the end of the day, the impact that you're meant to have, it's still there. You're still going to have
Yeah.
that impact. But it's making sure that where you're at in the moment, you're so crystal clear um, on who your audience is so that you can align your messaging.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So in terms of aligning those messages, we were talking at a conference recently where we got to funny enough, like meet in person for the first time after knowing each other on the internet for several years. That was a lot of fun. But we were talking about some AI tools that you've been developing kind of behind the scenes that you're using in your business, and that you had kind of come across this. There is an audience out there that is skeptical or resistant to AI. So, what do I do here with the messaging around this feature? How heavily do I lean into it? Do I straddle the line of like, sort of talking about it, but not too much? Or do I go all in? Or do I just keep it behind the scenes and only use it in our process? How has that kind of decision making process been for you as you've developed this tool?
Yeah, I love this question so much because AI is obviously up and coming and it's such a popular term nowadays, right? And it's not just that it's a term, it really is a very real thing. And it's just like with any industrial changes that have come over the years, we have to grow through the growing pains to be able to keep up with the change. And we all grow through change at different levels. As a business owner, though, I have come to learn and just believe in my heart of hearts that we might hit resistance. We might not want to get on the train. We might have some reluctance and we might have our own reasons behind that. But having some awareness around it is so important so that we can keep up. And so what I want to offer here with that is, when I started my business 4 years ago, AI wasn't a thing. I mean, it might have, started dabbling, but it wasn't a thing. It wasn't an actual thing. And so I built my business, and especially I'm going to talk about the done for you specifically at this point, right? But that agency side more from a manual process, right? Of course, there's automations and there's streamlining and there's systems and there's all of the bells and whistles on the back end, but definitely more of like a manual structured workflow, we'll say.
Hmm.
As AI started coming in, and of course, as a business owner, you start leveraging it for yourself personally. And then I started scaling and bringing team. We started really understanding, oh, wow, we have such a unique way that we can leverage this tool to not only benefit us as a business, but to benefit our clients. And so, what I mean by that is the tools that we have been building and leveraging through AI has allowed us to further streamline the framework that we built. So it's not that it's taking over, it's not that it's replacing, it's there's still the human element. There always needs to be the human element, right? I believe that through and through because that's how ultimately that's if we don't have the human element, that's how you end up with generic stuff, content, pitches, all the things. But adding the human element allows us to create more of that efficiency and that streamlining. And so, some of the things that we're seeing on our end is by building that in and leveraging AI, we have been able to increase the volume that we are putting out for our clients. And as a result of that, as you can imagine, increase in volume, we're getting an increase in success rate as well. But what AI has also been doing is we are quite literally building separate projects for each of our clients and we're building their voice, their messaging, their brand, their goals, their tone into the system. This is why the human element is important, right? Because, the conversation at hand today, we evolve, our business evolves, our messaging is constantly evolving. So it's not a said and done. It's not a plug in, it's plug in and once and it's done, right? So it is an evolution, right? We got to make sure that as our clients' messaging changes, we do update the tools that we are using. But it is, instead of pumping out generic stuff, it is pumping out super creative topics that align with the podcast that we are matching for our clients. So that's also lending itself to the increase in success rate. So what I want to offer with that is another reason I will say that factored into, okay, it is time to make a decision. Where is my business headed in here? And one of the reasons I did release the coaching program. Now, there were a lot of variables that played into it, but I will admit that AI was one of those things because I was looking at how I was teaching and coaching pitching inside of the accelerator and visibility and all of those things, right? How do you put yourself out there? And I had two options. I was seeing how AI was coming in and taking over, and it was clear that AI has been becoming, I'll call it as it is, one of my competitors. I'm like, okay, because everyone's just, let me just plug this into AI and have AI spit out the pitches and AI do this and AI do this until you realize, well, these are just, generic pitches and all the podcast hosts and whoever you're pitching is getting inundated with generic stuff that is you're not seeing the success you want from it. But ultimately, I was like, okay, well, I can choose to rework my program and now build AI into it so I can teach how to use it. Or let's just take what I've built that I'm teaching, package it up, kind of like accelerate it, right? So instead of learning how to do it, let's take it, package it up so that you can just have this system and this tool for you. So one of
Mhm.
the things that we were talking about at the conference, Ruthie, you and I, is creating a system, a pitching system where we build the AI solution for you. And now you have it primed and ready on your end as a business owner so that if you're going to leverage AI to do your pitching for you anyway, forget the generic stuff. Let's build it so it's built around your voice. It's built professionally, right? And then it's effective and it's sustainable. To further and go on the conversation we're talking at here, you asked also this. One of the things that you and I discovered at the conference is, oh, hang on, yes, AI is coming in, right? And we know it's coming in, so we want to stay on top of the curve. And but the thing that struck me across the face of the conference was, wait a minute, there's still a lot of reluctance out there.
Yeah.
Right. So, because we all grow with change at a different pace. So, yes, there are a lot of business owners and women who are using AI. There's a lot that are warming themselves up to it. And there's a lot that are still kind of like a little skeptical and not sure. So, what do? We pivot. So, we still have a system, a pitching system that we are building for our clients, but we are ultimately meeting them where they're at. Are you using AI? Great. How can we help you with that? And if you're not, that's okay too. You're not left in the dark. We still have something that we can build out for you. So it is really about pivoting. It's really about pivoting. You have to pivot. As a business owner, you have to pivot.
Yeah, and I think for you, it's you've landed on straddling that line of knowing that there is an audience who's all in that is going to be like, "Oh my gosh, it's amazing that you built this system. Tell me more. Give this to me." And then there's going to be an audience that is like, "No, I don't want that." And you're like, "Okay, that's fine. You don't have to take that piece of it. I can still help you." And that's different than trying to talk to everyone at the same time. Instead, you've chosen a perspective and a lane to say, this is the lane that I'm going to speak in. And if this side over here chooses and has questions, I can answer them. This side over here chooses and have questions, I can answer them. And I almost think about it from like the political spectrum of like
Mhm.
super far left, super far right. People are like, I don't want to polarize anybody in the business. But at the end of the day, what every single founder has to do with these polarizing issues is number one, know where you stand and
Mhm.
be okay with your own perspective and then craft and massage your messaging around that because you're kind of in the middle. You see that there is reason for fear and resistance and you also see that there is you know advantages to adoption. So it's like you're not saying here, oh, I'm just going to try to talk to everyone. It's you're choosing a lane and you're talking to those people, right?
Yeah, choosing a lane, talking to those people, and meeting them where they're at. And I
Mhm.
think this has a lot to do, like you and I, Ruthie, were talking recently, and I love this about what you do and how you offer your services because it's very customized. And I think that this just speaks to the conversation at hand. Yet it's like it's meeting them where they're at, right? So I can look at someone and when someone says, "What are your offers?" and say, "I've got a couple of different ways you can work with me. We've got done for you. We've got, the VIP accelerator, which is that system I'm talking about, which is more of like a done with you, right? Like you were saying earlier. But at the end of the day, I might have a client or a lead rather that is my ideal client who may not necessarily be ready for one of those buckets yet. So I'm like, okay, how can I help you? It's not a, oh, that just didn't work out. It's a, how can I help you? Right. So it's the same thing. Is it AI? Is it not? What is it that you need? Still talking to the same person, but I'm meeting them where they're at. And I think that's the big difference.
Yeah. In terms of the AI conversation, have you heard of the documentary? It's called the AI doc, How I Became an AI Apocalyptimist.
I've heard of it, but I can't say that I know much about it.
Okay, so it's on Peacock now. We just watched it over the weekend. It's fascinating. I definitely would recommend everybody watch it. I will preview that it starts out very doom and gloom,
Okay.
but it takes a turn and it kind of does leave you with I'm not sure which end of the spectrum I'm on, but that's for me to decide. And now I have perspectives from both sides, and so as a business owner, we can talk about our perspectives of using it, not using it, what that looks like. And it's interesting. I've been interviewing to add a content producer to our team. And one of the interview questions that I started using was talk to me about your relationship with AI. Because
Mhm.
I just want to know where other people are because I know we're not all in the same phase of that change curve.
Yeah, that you bring up such an interesting point here. And the first word that came to mind is alignment.
Hmm.
So we've been really honing in on messaging specifically. And it comes down to alignment, right? So I know when it comes to messaging, especially as business owners, and I hear this a lot with my clients too, there's the misconception that we have to have everything perfect before we can do anything. But when you can take a step back and just know that your messaging will naturally evolve anyway. So rather than stopping yourself short from doing the thing you want to do or desire to do, or maybe even resist doing. You know, you need to do it, but you resist it. So you're using whatever XYZ as an excuse. It's like just knowing that it's constantly going to evolve, right? At the end of the day, though, it's the alignment. It's making sure that no matter how you're talking about the thing, it's aligned with who you're talking to. So, to your point, right, the interviews that you've been doing recently, it's not that you might not necessarily be looking for a specific AI experience, but you want to make sure that that person aligns with your viewpoint because you want that person to grow with your company and where
Yes.
you're headed, right? So it's very similar. So it comes down to alignment, and I talk about this day in and day out, especially with like podcast guesting. You know, one of the biggest goals the majority of people have is I want to get on the most podcasts I can, the biggest podcast with the biggest reach and the biggest audience. But is it worth your time and energy to do that if you're not actually speaking to your ideal client? Again, it comes back to alignment. So when it comes to messaging, it's not just the content you're putting on social media, it's also the conversations you're having, the types of people you're having these conversations with, the podcasts you're looking to get on, the rooms you're looking to be in, the communities you want to speak in. It's really making sure, is my ideal client there? And then is what I'm talking about aligned with what they need from me?
Yeah. And I think there's two things that kind of popped out to me as you were talking through that. Number one, as a service provider, being open to having conversations where you're truly listening to understand instead of listening waiting to talk. Because I think if we can have more conversations where we listen to understand, that's only going to help us get more aligned with our own values and thoughts and perspectives and points of view versus the I already know, I'm just listening, waiting to talk. I'm just here to share my authority and my expertise. And that's where it really becomes more about relationships than funnels, right?
Oh, 100%. Audrey, you just hit the nail on the head. And, you know, that is the lens of pitching that I talk about, right? Because pitching can have such a negative connotation to it, right? It can have that, it's a word that can create resistance because we think a lot of the times we have the misconception that pitching can feel cold, it can feel like sleazy, salesy, right? Like as a sales call is a pitch, all of that. And I also say, yeah, you know, I have a 7-year-old at home and I'm constantly pitching her on the regular to eat her vegetables. So we as humans, truly, we are constantly pitching day in and day out. Right. When I was married, I would joke that I would, you know, pitch my ex on, okay, how about we go here this summer? Or let's do this vacation, right? Pitching your partner, your friend, your spouse, your kids on the idea that you have, whether that's let's go out for the afternoon or let's have this for dinner. And so, what is pitching at the end of the day? It's conversations with people that you have a relationship with. So, again, if you're pitching formally to be on a stage somewhere, to be a guest on a podcast, or you're having a conversation in the DMs with someone, or you're about to get on a sales call, it is a conversation. So, to echo what you said, Ruthie, really listening to where they are at is such a skill set that people are missing nowadays. And I think that's why AI has such a huge thing too, because it can take that human element away if you allow it to. But there
Yeah.
is a way to blend the two together. And that is my belief. But anyway, enough of that tangent. The point that again is it's connections, right? It's relationships. And when you can listen, coming back to you can meet them where they're at. And that is where you can leverage your wisdom and your knowledge to your benefit because you can hear them. And it's not just hearing them, but it's really having the skill set to also understand like what's underneath the layer for them. What are they
Hmm.
not telling you?
Yeah.
I have been having quite a few conversations lately. I'm doing some target market research and it's really put me in that situation of like, okay, I really want to listen. I have obviously a desire to listen to what you have to offer me because I need to hear this information from you. Gosh, the information that I've been getting, beautiful, beautiful, like golden nuggets of information that I wouldn't otherwise have if I didn't allow myself or put myself in the space to listen and receive feedback from my leads and my prospective clients.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So we talked about a lot of things today, and in terms of getting aligned with your own message, having conversations and relationships, and knowing that right audience and then the right message for the right audience. If somebody were to turn off this podcast and say like, "Gosh, that really got me thinking," what is one action step that you would recommend someone takes today to start getting more visible and more aligned with their message?
I feel like that's a two-part question, right? So the alignment aspect, I always say this is built on the foundation. So even with any client that we look to work with, whether it's in a done for you capacity or done with you, and even what I also taught through my coaching program as well, you have to lay the foundation. You can't build you can't build a home without a foundation, right? So you have to have that foundation. And so even if you already think you're clear on this part, I always say revisit this, whether it's like quarterly or biannually or when you visit your goals, but really lean into, okay, who do I serve? How do I help them? What's the transformation I help them see? And then not only who are they? Oh, they're women, they're, this age, whatever, their demographics, but it's really like, again, peel back the layer again. What are the psychological factors? I actually had a call with a client this week, and she's been in business for a year, for about 20 years, excuse me. And gosh, when I said, who do you serve? She already had all the psychological factors down. She knew where they shop. And why is that important? Because shopping at, a Costco is going to be different than shopping at a Walmart or shopping, so it says a lot about what they value, who they are. Why is that important? Because that's also then where you can understand how to align your messaging to that type of client. Again, going back to who is my done for you ideal client versus my coaching program ideal client, two completely different women. They're on different parts of their journey. One of them is more seasoned, one of them might be just starting out or is in transition. And so the way I position my messaging has a lot to do with that. So again, getting crystal clear on the who, and building that foundation, that's where you can start building that alignment from, right?
Yeah.
As far as how to get visible, taking the first step. So knowing where you're at. So, you know, from one end to the spectrum, I'll give you an example. If you're just starting out and you know that you want to show up more on your social media, but you have huge resistance with that, start there. And it doesn't even have to be perfect messaging or that you're speaking to your client. If you're one that doesn't show up already, just start showing up, whatever that looks like. Share what you had for breakfast today or share what you're doing. You're going for a walk with your dog. Just start showing up. And also, getting visible with yourself, right? So I would say even taking it a step back from that and look at your personal life for a minute and where are you not showing up fully? Where are you not holding your own boundaries? Is there a conversation that you want to have that's radically uncomfortable that you haven't had yet, right? Start looking at that and see how you can get visible there because there's a saying, wherever you go, there you are. It's the same thing with visibility. We can have all these goals and we can have the perfect strategy in place for our business. But if we're not actually getting visible personally and with ourselves first, we're not actually ever going to be able to meet the desired visibility we want outside of us. We have to start with ourselves first.
Yeah.
And then, for that seasoned woman business owner, again, evaluating where are you at right now? If you're looking to level up in your business, there's a strategy behind that. So really aligning that with your goals. But then again, scaling it back, taking a step back and saying, okay, me personally, because it starts with you first. How can I show up more visibly personally in my relationships, with my hobbies, with my desires? If I have this goal of drinking more water because whatever, for a multitude of reasons, but I'm still not doing that for myself. And I'm really not allowing myself to see myself in that. So that's what I mean is really taking a radical position on how can I see myself first and then taking that one incremental step at a time is really what it comes down to. It's like don't look at the whole picture because that can be overwhelming. Break it down.
Yeah. Seeing yourself and being okay with what you see. I think there's also, in entrepreneurship, in the girl boss hustle culture that we have gone through, the always on, always optimizing, there has to be this balance between what I'm seeing right now, giving myself some grace for what I see, and always constantly being chasing the next level, the higher thing, or and beating yourself up if you don't get there. And I think that fear in and of itself can hold a lot of people back from being visible.
Yeah. The fear, the limiting stories that we have are truly our biggest resistance barriers. And so I actually was talking about this the other day, and I think I maybe even put content out there on my social media, but women truly, we are our own bottleneck to our visibility. And the biggest reason for that is for the exactly what you just said, right? We're constantly chasing the next thing. But when we hit that resistance barrier, whether it be fear or imposter or fill in the blank, whatever that is for you, you have to be able to work with that resistance to break through and get to the other side. And a lot of the times we either sit and we swim there so we don't actually get anywhere, or we run away from it. Being seen, it's allowing yourself to see yourself in that discomfort and then taking radical ownership over how bad do I actually want this and what's one monumental step I can take in the right direction, right? Rather than just swimming around in our own pool of fear, because that'll just keep us stuck, right? So that resistance, it's like, okay, what is coming up for me? Is it fear? Is it imposter? Is it whatever? And usually it's layers on layers. But again, it's not about overwhelming yourself. It really just, let's just take a look at where you're at and take ownership over that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, this was such a good conversation. I think we could talk for hours about all the things of entrepreneurship, being a woman, visibility, alignment, all of those things that are so fun to talk about. But I appreciate you being here. Tell everybody if they'd like to connect with you, learn more about working with you, where can they find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything is Pitch with Kim. I am most active on my Instagram account. So that is 100% where you can find me. Come follow me, come connect with me. I love having conversations. Again, it comes down to the conversations, right? I just genuinely love connecting with people. So Pitch with Kim, also my website. And I believe, Ruthie, that you are going to drop. I have a visibility guide that I would love to offer your audience as well. I call it the 4 steps to consistent lead generation. But essentially, what it is it walks you through the 4 steps of how to put in that pitching workflow for yourself, right? So, pitching is pitching is pitching. It doesn't matter what opportunity you are pitching to. The idea behind it is consistency and making sure that you are building those relationships and those connections, and that visibility guide will walk you through that exact framework, which is the framework we use also inside of Pitch with Kim. And so that is also another way that you can connect with me. I have my contact information in there as well.
Yeah, I love that. And if you enjoy conversations like this, conversations with smart founders who care about people, who get what it's like to be a female founder and juggle all the things, I hope you'll come to our next marketing mixer. This is our quarterly networking event where we have conversations just like this, real mom founders having conversations about business, about life, about all the things. I promise it's not a pitch fest. It is just a conversation, but you might meet some people that can support you in your business journey. So check out the show notes for the link to register for our next mixer, and we'll see you there. And thank you so much, Kim. This was a great conversation.
Thank you, Ruthie. Appreciate it.